Welcome to another edition of the Fireside Chat, and we've got an amazing episode and a good friend of mine as a guest, Angelo Robles. Thank you so much for joining us, founder of Family Office Association and extraordinary individual. So how are you doing, Angelo? Thank you so much for taking the time.
I am doing fantastic. Thank you for the extraordinary individual part. My family would be like, what? Who said that?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of different levels, and we're going to dig into them and share kind of your journey and your experiences and your amazing mindset more than anything. So why don't we just start really high level with what is a family office, and then we'll get into the association and we'll get into some history.
Sure. I mean, KC, before we get into that, it's a pleasure to be here in your studio. I've been a big fan of what you do for a long time. It's great that we did something in the past, but never face to face.
Yeah.
So if the audience doesn't know, I'm headquartered in Greenwich, Connecticut, and the pleasure here in the spring of being out in LA. And of course, I get cold weather and clouds.
You brought it with you from the East Coast.
Of course I did. But the audience cares about your question. It's one of the most common questions I get. You know, when I started this, what feels like almost 20 years ago, it seems like so few people, even in wealth management, really knew, like, what is a family office?
I get the question every single day. I talk a lot about family offices, and it's a common thing that people don't really understand. So who better to help demystify it than the king of the Family Office Association?
So you're the one who's bringing up the question of what is a family office, and you're inspiring people around the world in legal, accounting, financial, whatever, to be more interested. So I'm glad you're the person driving interest to what people like me do.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Someone has to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the most classic definition of a family office is an entity and talent dedicated exclusively to one family to manage their financial and often their life affairs, from transition of wealth, education of the next generation, tax issues, household management of their many, many homes, yachts, whatever it may be. So from their perspective, one, they have the money. They want the ultimate in privacy, control, and customization. That's no disrespect to a multifamily office, to a wealth manager, to a banking entity. You all provide amazing services, and family offices need to work with you. But for a family of great wealth, and we could talk about exactly what that is, nothing beats having that 24/7 dedicated to your family internally with your structures and your talent. And again, I repeat it, 24/7 dedicated to your privacy, your control, and your customization. The single family office, specifically, the single family office is the ultimate for the super rich.
Yeah, it really is. And the 24/7 is key because this is all concierge, white glove service dedicated around you. It's kind of the difference when you're flying first class versus private is it's a nice experience in first class, but you're still on everyone else's schedule. When you fly in private, it's all about you, or in this case, the family, right? So that is the real key thing here, and people really don't get a good concept of that. To break it down into kind of simple speak, we can use a CPA firm. Most people have a CPA firm, and that CPA will work for hundreds, if not thousands of clients. So come tax time, they're going to be very stressed out. Versus a CPA that is exceptional at what they do, working just for one family. It's a very different experience, right? Because you text, lift up the phone, shout across the hall, whatever it is you want, and you have that dedicated service 24/7 instantly.
KC, I must say I'm impressed. You've learned so well. Like, I'm sitting back learning from you in terms of your analogy that you gave on the first class versus private jet. I'm going to steal that moving forward.
Absolutely, no
problem. I probably won't give him proper credit, by the way, which is very sad of me. But that's a great example. Now, I could point out, and you have to think about things very strategically and with critical thinking, are there disadvantages to that? And the answer is there could be. And I'll give you some examples. One, do not have a single family office if you don't plan to do it excellent. Just think, these are families that are the top, 1/10,000th of 1%, maybe even more than that, actually.
Yeah.
They built incredible companies. And yet somehow that level of rigor, that institutional quality, sadly often doesn't apply to now managing often their billions of dollars of wealth. You need to build the right structure, have the right culture, and the buck stops here with the family and what they build in terms of their internal structures, their boards, and the dedication they have. It comes down to people, the quality of the people. They have to bring on the right people that not only fit in, but add to the culture. And the opportunity of probably what's more important in a successful family office is people by far number one, followed in my opinion by your systems, AKA your processes,
Yep.
arguably best practices, and technology. Those are going to be critical. But I promised I would give one example of where sometimes, besides not hiring the right person or right team, a challenge is you bring on someone with an accounting background. Let's go with that. Okay. Someone who's a high quality CFO. And they're used to working with top level families and let's call it corporations, meaning they have the resources of a large firm, which they usually won't get in a single family office. And they have the experiences of working with different type of clientele. Sometimes does that executive grow a little stale and they're a little too siloed and isolated inside a single family office? The answer is yes, that could happen.
Definitely yes, I've seen it many times.
If you don't, you should have the quality of work that is stimulating to the person. And if you don't use that enough, then you are probably better off outsourcing it to the best of the best and holding them to certain standards. But are you quite going to have that level of control and customization that you would have if you kept it internal? Probably not. So that's the trade-off. Before you launch a single family office, again, you want it to be great, but you need a business plan. You need a strategy. You need to structure it correctly where it could be the best of the best. Otherwise, you know what? Don't have it at all. Just don't. You're better off going the other options.
And there are other options, so we can explore them in a second, but you've said a lot of great, valuable things. One, if you're going to do it, this is an expensive thing to do. UBS did a study a couple of years back saying the average high net worth family office costs in the region of $5 million a year to operate and maintain.
And that may be a little light, but that's relatively in the right ballpark.
Yeah, but that's still a lot of money just for operations. If you're not going to do it to an excellent level, there are other options. So what would you say is the next option down? Is it a multi-family office? Is it a virtual family office? Or is it just working with a team of really high net worth advisors?
I mean, I've written extensively about a verbiage that you used, a virtual family office. Your single family office could be a virtual family office. Mm-hmm. It just means it's not centered in one specific location. You outsource more. It's probably leaner. You could effectively have an incredible single family office that, for the most part, is, let's go with the word virtual. But the core of your question was other alternatives. Just because you're super rich, okay, I promised I would define that. And I gave different definitions of this over my near 20 years. Yes, it's possible for, I don't know, 50, 60 million to technically create the structures of a family office and to hire one person who's a non-family member. Sure, practically anyone could do that. And I'm not saying that doesn't show elements of a small virtual, perhaps family office. It does. But to me, the more that I'm in the business, the more I realize that I'm going to put that benchmark at 750 million. If you really want to do it right and you want to have the resources that are top in class, and by the way, that 5 million you noted would then skyrocket.
Absolutely.
Because if you're especially active doing investing and direct investing, you're hiring people that had tremendous potential in private equity and investment banking. They're easily 7-figure earners. And why are they going to work for you? Actually, oftentimes working in a single family office, some people have described to me as one of the worst jobs that they've ever had. Growing stale, promises that were never lived up to.
Yeah.
And if they're really, really good at the kind of investing that I described, they potentially could earn more getting a carry or investment banking fee and structures.
Yeah, you're getting
so
a couple
now
of
you
percent
have
on
to,
each of those deals, right?
now you have to structure the family office or maybe separate investment arm almost as the wealthy family, in my opinion, funding a GPLP structure where that talent you're bringing on is getting a part. They're not getting 2 and 20, but maybe it is something like 1 and 10, or something with golden handcuffs where the better they do, the opportunity they have to participate and carry, and maybe there's opportunity if they're a little newer in their career for the family to even do possibly forgivable loans and other strategies where they could co-invest. The families, if they're doing it right at that level, and the executives can make a lot of money, but you do want to have them have skin in the game at that level. And that's going to be
everybody
very important.
performs better when there's skin in the game, which is why the way we price is a percentage of what we save. So the family offices that we work with on everyone is we bring in X amount of value to the table. We take a piece of just of what we've created, not the whole pie, but just our subset. And that's went down really well with the higher net worth family offices because they see the value in that. It's lower risk and we're sharing in the reward. So I can definitely see the value of doing that across the board with the key, like you said, the investment arm of it. Mm-hmm. The other thing you mentioned, which was quite interesting, was the structure, the systems and processes. And we use Traction in my business and Together CFO. And Traction has a really good system of bringing people together and bringing the goals of the organization together. And one of the subsets that I think is prevalent is right person, right seat. You could be a really good CFO for a Fortune 100 company, but it doesn't mean you're going to be really good in a single family office because, like you said, you don't have an army around you. You're going to be a lot more hands-on in a family office.
Self-starter,
yeah,
less resources, and arguably doing things that may drift a little bit than the core definition of what your skill set at a high level and what you did at a prior firm. It's different. And I'm not saying it's going to be the best fit for every talented executive. Actually, I'm probably going to say it's not, maybe even for the majority. Yeah. And just because you're the best at what you do, and I'm talking from both that perspective and the family now, doesn't mean that you're going to be the best fit for that family in their single family office. One, you may have an ego that you bring to you that partially is earned, especially on the investing side, but that may warp the culture of the others inside a more traditional family office. In that example, the family may be better off outsourcing that and keeping that person wherever they are now or independent and not ruining the culture and fabric and often a small entity of a limited number of employees that make up a family office because it's not like it's 100 or 200 or 300 people most of the time. Usually it's under 10. So one person who is difficult and isn't as much of a team player, but may be talented and you could still outsource them. But why bring that person inside the organization? Because it may dilute, and challenge what you've built.
It's the culture, yeah. As you expand with every team member that comes in, you're changing the dynamic, you're changing the nucleus of what the family really is, because each one of these family office team members is a part of the family, and it grows that. So with each bad hire or different hire, it does have a huge impact, and that's really what we've seen, because we work with a lot of these families, and we are that subset, that one slice of the pizza pie that comes in from an estate planning and tax savings perspective, and we work well with the rest of the family, and we're effectively outsourced just in that one piece where we have the finance guys, we have the investment guys, we have the insurance guys, and everything else around the family, and we just come in, do our piece, play nice with everyone. But we've seen how cultures and dynamics change within these family offices very easily because, like you said, you're 10%. If it's 10 people and you're one of those people, you get a bad apple.
That makes an impact.
Huge impact.
Now, I could argue a little bit the converse of that. One person who's just so amazing and so inspiring may actually adapt the culture to bring it up. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't, we're putting maybe the more negative spin on it. in terms of the culture coming down, which unfortunately, probably more often than not, is more of the reality, but it doesn't have to be that way. This goes back to what I said earlier. It's not even a question. Among everything you could think of that's going to be most important to the success of a family office, it is the people. And by people, yeah, the people that work, especially non-family members inside the family office and what you develop in terms of your culture, but the family members themselves that are dedicated to it and treating it, again, with institutional level rigor. But don't forget, it still has the word family in family office. To ignore that family dynamics within the family don't play into the aspects of a family office is just foolish. The number of even good family offices that survive to the next generation, it's very poor. I would say from my experiences, most family offices will come and go on average in about 10 years. Some will last 20. I don't know many that have lasted, let's say, 25 or 30 years. Well, sure, they're out there, some hundreds of years.
The stats are ridiculous on this. I think
right.
by the third generation, it's down 95% or something.
Well,
really.
That's the wealth of the family.
Yeah.
But it's even to some degree worse with the sustainability, like I said, often 10, 15 years of a single family office.
Why do you think that is?
Oh, I never heard that question before. You know, the buck has to stop somewhere.
Yeah.
And it sounds like maybe I'm kicking the executives a little too hard. And I think for the most part, they're dedicated in the work that they want to do and do the best job they could to the family. But that also brings up a reason as to why most SFOs fail. Incompetence and complacency.
Of the executives, not the family members that have put them in?
Oh, absolutely both. But yeah, rather bluntly, let me make that very clear. Incompetence, which means it may be something you could get better at. Mm-hmm. But you know what? You're too set in your ways. You don't want to have that open mindset. Or the beginner's mindset. You don't want to be open-minded. You're stuck on what you learned back in school and your career. That part of it's probably pretty darn good, actually. But things change. You need to adapt. It's one thing to be resilient.
Absolutely.
That's good.
Yeah.
But to be better than that is to be truly adaptable and, read some of the work of Nassim Taleb and others, and General McChrystal and others that write really eloquently, Jocko Willink and others in the community, from whatever military to a variety of different perspectives. But I do get away a little bit from the core question that you have. That never happens to me, by the way. I don't know how that ever happened. So in terms of that question, which was more related to really why doesn't it last longer than 10, 15 years?
That's not a long period of time.
It's because the wealth creator, or whoever created the SFO, is the all-encompassing ruler. And does it engage other family members in the rising generation enough?
Is that an ego thing?
That's part of it. A part of it is simply, it's easy. I think even Warren Buffett said, I like an investment committee that's an odd number and it's less than 3. It's 1. And that is absolutely the easiest governance model in terms of how decisions are made. And you know what? Sometimes, maybe in initial and small family units, sometimes it might even be the best. I'll give you that. But for the most part, in a family that believes in continuity of the family, which should be the number one goal of a family of great wealth.
Yeah.
That's more than wealth preservation. It's a deeper meaning and deeper purpose than that. The elders, or the creator, have to engage the rising generation. What do the elders bring to the table? They bring experience, I'd like to hope competence, and they combine that with actionable ideas and strategies. But do they become a little set in their ways with age? I know, I'm just 37, but
lack of technology and all the rest.
You didn't laugh when I said I'm 37. Why? But this makes me feel good. Thank you.
You look fantastic for your age. I know you don't have your tattoos on display right now, but you're in great shape. So.
Oh, now we're going to scare all the audience away. But we'll maybe come back to that a little bit later. But the youth bring vibrancy, you'd like to hope more open-minded to new ideas.
Yeah, it's a blend,
and
right?
what a surprise. They're almost, well, not almost, they're always more tech savvy. And the world is changing. So the best is to combine the experience of the creators and elders with the rising generations and have a voice that is shared and listened to. That doesn't mean one side is always right, but it means they should be active listeners to the other side. And there should be governance and a process for how decisions are made. The younger or rising generation needs to understand the family office, the value that it provides. They need to engage with them. And yeah, okay, I'll probably get in trouble in this next comment. There needs to be people in the family office that they could relate to. You know, if grandpa founded the family office and everyone is grandpa's age, no offense to people, whatever, 60, 70, or 80s, again, tremendous experience that could be very, very valuable and respected. But it would be valuable to the rising generation to have people that are going to be relatable, that are maybe younger and dynamic coming up within the family office that they could relate to as well. So then what happens is the elder creator, whatever, loses interest, gets disabled, or passes on. And the younger generation is, well, what's this? How come we're spending so much money on this? And, you know, that person spoke to me like once in the last 7 years. I don't even know who they are. We have nothing in common.
We can get rid of them.
Yes. And that usually is what happens.
So I've got a great analogy for this one.
Please.
So in my early days working for FlowServe, one of the higher up bosses said to me, and it still stays to me to this day, a guy called Lyndon Wilson, great guy. He said, you need 3 types of people in any business, or there's generally 3 types of people. One is the person that comes and goes very quickly, doesn't fit in, or whatever, comes, goes. The second is the one that sticks around for a very long time and will sit there and do the same job day after day after day, not miss a beat. And then the third one will be the one that comes in and you develop into that rising star. And you need a blend of all 3 of these. If you have too much of any one of these categories, it becomes a bad thing for the culture of the company, because let's use an example that everyone's set in their ways, copy and paste type tasks. You're not going to have any innovation. You have too many high flyers trying to get to the top of the tree. You're not going to have enough stability. Or you have too many people come and go. You're not going to have a good amount of quality. So there's always a balancing act between the 3 types of people that you need in any business. And a single family office is no different. It's just at a higher level of net worth and more hands in the pie from the family, because now you've got not only business decisions that make an impact, but also family relationships. Uncle might not like this specific nephew. And he's like,
that happens all the time.
That nephew's an idiot. Let's just use the TV show right now, Succession.
Oh, great.
Fantastic, right? Cousin Greg is like an outcast, and he's not taken seriously by anyone. But this happens all the time. There's different family dynamics, and it affects business decisions, which is another reason why the average length could be 10 to 15 years before the wealth is dissipated. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, that's 100% true. That's very well said. You're obviously experienced in a lot of these issues and bring up a different perspective and different skill set from the experiences that you have and the families globally that you've dealt with. And that's tremendous, and basically segues well into what I said. You know, all these things are a reality. Again, it has the word family and family office. There's family dynamics. No one is perfect. I guess there's always a black sheep, and maybe that black sheep is good. Maybe it creates a stagnant way of thinking. It shakes up, it rattles things up. But I've dealt with families before where one of the value they get by family continuity and being together is they have the power of their minds, their experience, their capital, their quote unquote on the same page. They could kind of row together like a rowing team.
Yeah, got to be in sync, right?
In sync. The reality is there often is something that is out of sync. So you're not going to be as effective and or efficient by being that. So how do you identify that? When you're too close to the action and all that is going wrong, you can't see it. Yeah. Like one of the greatest things that I didn't do it often enough, was basically to get a coach. Like, hold on. Like Ray Dalio says, big fan of Ray Dalio. He spoke at one of my Family Office Association events back in 2014, if I have the right year, and he was humble, incredibly generous with his time, and incredibly insightful. But I think in one of his latest books, he talks about that we all, after some success, have a level of ego, which to some degree we could argue is needed. In a world that is challenging, a level of confidence could be important. But does that take it too far? But more important is blind spots. So now you combine ego with blind spots, you have a problem. You're not growing, you're not adapting. And unfortunately, that's too often the case broadly in many structures, including governance and decision-making, which is decision-making inside a family office, and with many executives. I was with a group of fellow consultants in the family office world. We were advising a technology concern about what they were doing to be of value to family offices. And, like one of the people there, of course it was meant to be tongue-in-cheek. Don't take it overly seriously, but there was about 20 grains of truth to it. Is a single family office a position that many people go to effectively to die?
At the end of their career.
It's the end of their career. Again, I'm not saying that they don't bring talents and experiences. They could. But again, what are going to be some of the drawbacks? And the buck stops with the family. You're not holding their feet to the fire. Just because you like them and they're trustworthy, two arguably pretty important things. I'm not denying that. But again, it goes back to what's their competency and their ability to work within the structure of what you're building as a team and to be additive to it, to be beneficial. And look at even bringing in people, again, maybe to relate to the rising generation, and even people that could, I hate to use the word replace them, but I'll try to turn to an analogy. I'm a big sports guy, so whether it's college football, pro football, NBA, baseball, soccer, boxing, MMA, God, I guess I spend too much time watching sports. And this applies to the family office in many ways, from ownership to general manager, to coaches, to staff, to quote unquote the talent, the players, blah, blah. They all are important and all have a role. And one of the things that happens in professional sports teams, what happens to a team that's at the top, whatever, for many years? The Yankees, back in the day, the San Antonio Spurs, the Lakers, etc. Their coaching staff maybe get a little bit of an ego. They want more and more money, sometimes rightfully so. And the staff gets plucked. You lose staff. So if you're a family office that is losing staff, I would look at it, well, actually it could be one of two things. One, you're not providing the opportunity and the compensation to make it attractive for them to be a long-term concern. So that may fall on you. But also, maybe you have such talented people, like even the best sports teams, of course you're going to lose some. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Part is friends still share in best practices now that they're going to have different experiences with a different family. So many families and senior executives in a family office miss out on the opportunity to truly have legitimate global best practices among the best of the best. So if you're losing people, it might be a negative on the family or family office's part that they may have to correct, but it could absolutely be that you're doing such a good job with such amazing people. By nature, there may be other people that want or are willing to overpay for the talent that you have. So this goes to the importance of, again, it's people, people, people. That's going to be the number one thing ahead of systems, processes, technology, etc. that's going to determine the success of the family office. If we're having this discussion in 10 years, I may change my mind because what's happening in technology?
It's
AI.
Night and day difference. Right?
AI is developing so rapidly. So many family offices are shockingly behind the times. And really anything.
Well, they're not early adopters of technology, generally speaking.
No.
It's really hard to get them into that, hey, we can do things much more efficiently like this. But for some reason, they don't like to budge too much.
Well, I know part of the reason why, and I can relate to it in my age bracket. Again, this is not as digitally native as someone who's younger. You have to force yourself to become better at it. You have to put aside the ego. Ray Dalio said the blind spots. You have to proactively learn and constantly educate yourself, self-educated, and again, trust, like I said earlier, in coaches and mentors, in talented people that can make you better. Just because you're successful and just because you're in your 60s doesn't mean that you still can't go from being average to good, good to very good to great, and maybe great to incredibly exceptional. All those things are possible if you really, really want to. But the world of AI will most definitely take positions away, well, from many jobs, but including in the family office. And there may be a point, I don't know, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, where technology perhaps supersedes almost anything.
I think it'll probably be quicker than that based on the way ChatGPT and all these other tools.
Don't scare me too much.
Yeah, I think it's going to be quicker. Let's segue into the next chapter of your life, because you've had some very significant life events. You've built a fabulous company over the last 20 plus years, and now you're entering into the next chapter, traveling the world to be with and interview a lot of billionaires and really get into their psychology, because we know, because we're around many billionaires on a daily basis, right? I have the pleasure of being mentored by 3 different billionaires, so they rub off on me a lot, and the average billionaire thinks completely differently to the average millionaire or multimillionaire. And the average multimillionaire thinks completely differently to the average person on the street. It's perfectly normal. There's a scale to everything. Whether we compare in Ferraris to Priuses, it's the billionaires to everybody else. What has your experience been? Because you've been doing this for multiple decades and been surrounded by...
God damn, I'm that old?
It's experience. I would say wisdom.
Wisdom, I like that word.
Yeah.
That's what we'll call it.
But
Yes.
you've created all this value for so many families and so many teams working for those families over the last 2 decades. What are some of the key takeaways that you've seen from the psychology of billionaires and the way they think compared to everybody else?
Yeah, that's a great question. To give a little bit of context, I'm the founder for much of those decades of working with great wealth for over 15. I've been the founder of an organization that I'm very proud of. It's called Family Office Association. And I could not do this all on my own.
Yeah.
I go back to early billionaires and families that believed in my vision, felt that you still have a lot to learn, and I still do.
We all do. That learning never stops for anybody.
And importantly, they were willing to help. I go back to people that were early in FOA, like Joe Riley, that was a very good president, and I appreciate the value that he brought. Along with me, the Family Office Association, Ryan Anson would be another. These were incredibly talented people, and an organization like Family Office Association, sure, hopefully I contributed my part, but it would not have been what it did become if it wasn't for people like them, my members and others, and I greatly appreciate their past support. We're doing this in the spring, in late April of 2023, so if someone watches this in 5 years, I'm trying to give some context. I decided to step away from Family Office Association, an organization that I love. I wish the new controlling ownership group nothing but the best. I think they're talented people that will bring much to the table and perhaps have a new and different perspective and breathe new life into Family Office Association. So I think it was time for me to step away and step up. So what I'm going to be doing over the next couple of months is effectively, boy, this is real torture, traveling the world, having a chance to meet with amazing people who are incredibly successful, and others, from mentors to former competitors and others, to learn, to do what Ray Dalio said, to put ego aside, to realize my blind spots and what I could have done better in the past, what I could do better now, and hopefully how I could continue to learn and do better moving forward in the future. But getting a little more applicably to your question, yes, I've been on a tremendous insider perch for much of the last 2 decades, having interviewed some of the most amazing people on earth, often face to face, some of the world's greatest investors, some of the world's most successful families and single family office executives, where again, I'm humbled to have the opportunity to learn so much from them. And now I could do that without the clock running, so to speak, and really be in a relaxed frame of mind and really enhance my ability for critical thinking, something that I talk and I coach executives about being the best that they could be, often within the family office. A chance for me to step back and learn more than ever from that perspective as well. So I will be traveling to key spots in Europe and hopefully LATAM and Asia. And even my travels here in LA will have me meeting with families that are just like amazing and all I could learn. So I look back to the research that I've done, the people that I know that I've spoken to, the homes I've been invited to, the relationships that I have, and I probably have touched more of the super rich, however you define that. I said, what, 750 million before? You know, some may say a couple of 100 million. Oh, I'm sure there's others that have touched more, sure. But I don't know, maybe somewhere in the top 10 globally. So that gives me data points. That gives me research. Kind of at heart of it, I kind of fashioned myself a bit of an intellectual, a researcher, a thought leader. Hopefully I developed a pretty decent stage presence because how you present is going to be valuable to keep people engaged.
Because one of the key things that I love about you is always constantly learning. You never stop learning and trying to improve and leaving the ego at the door. So I took that away from our first conversation together.
That's so kind of you. And it's not easy to do. And there are times when I don't feel like doing it. I feel like I don't know about all I need to know about something. But then I realize again how foolish that is and how humbled I am by often all the mistakes that I've made. And it's okay to make mistakes. You hope to learn from them so you don't repeat them. So you could ask me a lot of questions, I guess, from what I'm learning from the super rich or billionaires. And what I plan to do, I don't know, probably sometime post the summer, is to do something to be of value to young entrepreneurs, to people in the financial services community, to people that want to work in the family office community, to millionaires who want to be worth more, who want to be billionaires, and how about the people that are just simply young and hungry and starting from nowhere? Could I impart knowledge and resources to them? They still have to do the work.
The action.
But could I impart knowledge and resources that maybe if they take action could 10x what they're doing, or at minimum would take them years, could I condense into a month or two? I know that I could. And how valuable is that going to be to them? Well, that's going to be for them to decide. I can't say that. But there's just so much that I've learned. I mean, I've had, at Family Office Association, we had 3 family offices among the Forbes 20. You know, these are families behind the family offices worth tens of billions to sometimes 100 billion and up. And there are certain data points and things that I've learned. What do they read? What do they watch? What do they listen to? What kind of family did they grow up in? 1-parent household, 2-parent? What were the roles of the parent? How engaged in the upbringing were the parents?
Can you share some of those high-level trends that you've seen?
Sure. You know, again, it's probably boring on the watch, read, and listen, but some of it's obvious. Wall Street Journal, to some degree Forbes, Financial Times. They have their own favorite economist or deeper thinker or thought leader. That kind of tends to vary a lot. And when I output my data points and research coming up in a couple of more months, I'll be able to analytically define that and share that. Happy to. But yes, since you did ask, 81%, I believe it was, so I guess there is one analytic that I know off the top of my head, do come from 2-parent households that have become super rich. Let's call it billionaire. That does not mean that coming from a 1-parent household, like effectively I came from, that it's not impossible to be successful. But it does show the value of commitment to something like marriage and the opportunity to be dedicated to a responsibility that you have to your children. Not that you're going to make it easy for them. You make it too easy, that's bad. But the opportunity to be loving and the opportunity to educate. I think I once heard a parent say, like, well, I don't need to teach them. They're learning all they need to learn in school. That's like, that's a joke. Trust me, they're not learning all they need to know in school in terms of how the world really works. If anything, school is often 10, 15, 20 years behind the times. So the opportunity for engaged parents, and yes, some people are going to say, well, great. Angelo's basically saying that the super rich have often upper middle class to rich to super rich parents. They have the dedicated resources of the families, money to provide networking and we'll get to that in a second, health and education, and they have the network to help provide for them. There is a degree of truth to that. I'm not going to deny that, but you can't hold that against them. Why don't you instead work on becoming the best that you could be and being dedicated one day, if you become a parent, to be the best parent that you could be? Stop looking for excuses. Stop looking for whatever. I'm too short, I'm this, I'm that. All those things may have a degree of truth to them. They may not be the most optimal that you could have been born with in those circumstances, but you are the one that's going to be the definition of whether, however you define success and happiness. It's not going to be the fact that something else held you down. Even if there is some truth to that, you have to put that aside. So those are some of the things that I've noticed. Education, some of them didn't even graduate college. Some of them, yes, I would say a good percentage went to a top tier college. So I asked Michael Saylor of Bitcoin fame, what's the most valuable thing that you learned at MIT? He hesitated for 5 or 6 seconds and said, I've learned to think for myself. Okay. So a powerful thing. A lot of people forget what they learn in school unless it's specifically to a trade, whatever, maybe legal, accounting. So I guess that is a lot, being a physician, etc. For the most part, the majority of us, most of our professors probably really weren't that good, to be honest with you. We could save that discussion for a different time.
Yeah, I think we do a full podcast on that one.
And what they learned in college may not be as applicable for what they apply in terms of real life. But again, this goes back to, it's up to you to take something from that. It's up to you to learn. And what are the other values of going to school? You get away from your parents, you become independent, you develop a network of relationships.
That's a huge thing. That was the biggest thing that I took away.
Yes.
Was now I had to cook for myself, fend for myself, decide if I actually wanted to go to class or not.
Yeah, probably sometimes we didn't.
Yeah, and whether I
actually
go out partying and all the rest of that stuff is me creating my own decisions without parental oversight 24/7. So it helped me kind of become a man when I moved away for university.
And yes, an Ivy League school is going to be a great option if it's applicable for that student. It's more than just do they qualify, is it going to be a good fit for them?
But back to what you said earlier with technology moving so fast and AI, if it's not a trade, let's just use a doctor as an example. If you're not going to medical school, how much value does it bring compared to being around the elders of the family, where you're going to learn and shadow and get
100%.
So much more value from that compared to sitting watching a professor who's never really built a business or been in the real world and learning from that person?
It was a little bit of a crude comment, but we were talking about someone who we won't mention before we started, and I think the comment they had was go into the business schools, go to the parking lot, and tell me the kind of cars that the business professors are driving. Now, do I totally agree with that comment? No, but there is a degree of truth to, they may be driving a Toyota Corolla, and why don't you go meet the entrepreneur? And again, we may say he's being frivolous with his money, but he's driving a Lambo, driving a Ferrari, but there's a level of success that person has. Put the facade of how they want to showcase it that we may disagree with. Put that facade aside. Like, God, how did you do that? But also back to the Ivy League schools. Yes, the network of people around you who go to those kind of schools and have that IQ and have that intelligence and have the gumption, that is valuable. There was something I learned, like the really smart people seem to go into consulting from the business side, and the hungry people go into investment banking. Now that's starting to shift. You have, of course, the world of Silicon Valley, of technology, the growing role of AI, the rise, fall, and slight rise again of crypto. And you have so much going on. But back in the day, even 10, 15 years ago, that was almost a clear-cut thing that you saw. I did, and I can't prove this analytically. I can't. But I did ask them this question in surveys and in person, and sometimes I could put two and two together. Does the average billionaire, are they simply just smarter than the average person? I do agree you can't judge intelligence solely by IQ. Of course not. But is it potentially interesting as one analytical point? So the average person is about 100 to 110. The average billionaire is closer to 125, 135. It's higher. I wouldn't say way higher. There are exceptions. Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg have extremely high IQs, likely much higher than even 135 or 140. There is a point when for some of them that may be a detriment to emotional intelligence, and no matter their IQ or intelligence has no impact on their ability to be a loving, father, mother, son, daughter, lover, like has
Leader.
zero impact on those things. So again, don't use as an excuse, I have average genes, I'm 5'10", my IQ is 108. Wonderful. Maximize what you have and become great at the other things you could control and become great at. And I find that billionaires don't let obstacles and challenges stand in their way. Look at the story of Richard Branson and all that he did, right?
I study Richard
Look at that.
all the time. He's amazing.
Richard is smart, but I wouldn't say he's a 150, 160 IQ person,
Definitely.
But he's an amazing entrepreneur, emotional intelligence. So one thing that we also...
And a people person, too.
And extremely so. Is some of that born? Sure. But some of that is developed because you're aware of it. When you become aware, you can make changes to enhance and improve, even if it's uncomfortable. Those are things that you could do. So again, the billionaires don't let obstacles stand in their way. You used a word earlier that they think differently than others. That doesn't mean they are different, although their willpower inevitably becomes potentially their mindset, but how they think about problems is different. So one of them did mention this to me. I did notice that an unusual number of them are usually contrarians. And I think one of them put it, well, Angelo, why do I want to be average? No offense to the average person. They're the average height, they're the average this, they're the average that. And maybe they're happy, and that is awesome. Maybe they have more happiness than I do. But I had a goal, a passion of being successful and whatever from a monetary perspective. So for me, being a contrarian and doing things differently than what the masses do was going to be something that's very, very important.
You know, Tony Robbins says that really articulately. He says, I hold myself to a higher standard, and I'm not willing to compromise my standard.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I've interviewed Tony Robbins in person at a live event in Santa Monica here in LA a couple of years ago, 2019. And I was fortunate to go to his studios in Palm Beach a couple of years ago in 2021. And a very dynamic individual, and certainly someone who's very passionate and inspiring, comes from an incredibly humble background. And the successes and the value that he does from a philanthropic perspective as well.
He was homeless, and then he gives away all of his food, and he does a great job. But
of course.
I'm quite close with one of his mentors, Jay Abraham. And we spend a lot of time.
Like he's a legend when it comes to marketing and things like that, for sure.
It's fantastic. So as we look to wrap up, what are some of the best ways that people can keep track of you and follow your journey around the world, following these elite billionaires and families and learning from them?
Sure. And I'm going to, before I answer that, self-answer a question that I think relates even to some degree to what you asked and maybe whets the appetite a little bit too. What drives often these billionaires? And for me, some of the things that I found are freedom, status, and mating. Some people will call that money, power, and sex. And again, look at the work of David Buss in evolutionary psychology. You know, read. That's what a lot of successful people do. Yeah, they have hopefully great parents, but if not, OB, so is it. They learn from them, the elders, as you said, their professors, college teachers, and again, no excuses, but you take self-responsibility. What you watch, what you read, who you listen to are all things that if you learn and you take action are going to be incredibly valuable. So to me, freedom is often a number one thing I found of the billionaires. They define freedom as a level of financial success that allows them the capability of freedom.
Well, it's time, right? Time is the most precious commodity that we all have. We all have to spend equally, whether we're a billionaire or whether we're not a billionaire, we're just a regular millionaire or just a regular person on the street. We all have the same 24 hours in a day that we have to spend. It's the one universal equalizer of men.
That is for sure. And we all have a clock, and that clock doesn't last forever.
Yeah.
For now, who knows? Things are advancing so much.
Dr. Sinclair's trying to rewind that clock.
I've interviewed Dr. David Sinclair as well. He's great. And yes, in case you're all wondering, yes, maybe it's a little eerie to some of you, but the super, super rich gravely care about longevity. So let us surprise as they get older and maybe their mortality is a little bit more in sight. They often do become one more religious. They become more aware, and often more even beneficial in many ways to society. But the issues pertaining to medicine, biomedicine, healthcare, all those things, and even that's a journey that I went through that we could probably save to the next time that I come in or you come into New York or Greenwich, Connecticut, and that will be a lot of fun. In terms of now answering your more specific question, as I noted, with certainly sadness and the opportunity of moving on, but also looking at it as moving on and moving up. I've left a love of mine in Family Office Association.
You built this over decades, yeah.
Of course. And with that, to some degree, comes your identity. And identity is an important thing, by the way, that I also talk about in the work that I do, with billionaires in terms of the mindset. That's a very important thing. Initially, the identity is something that basically your self-will and your driving force helps to identify who you are and what you want to be. Because if you don't do it, other people are going to do that for you. And then their impression of you is going to become reality because you're letting it become that.
Yeah, they're going to fill the frame, as a good friend of mine, Rene Rodriguez, says. If you don't fill that frame and populate it for them, they can preconceive whatever notions they have in their mind, either incorrectly or correctly, more often than not incorrectly, because you haven't filled that frame for them. So be very clear on what you're saying.
Very clear. So in terms of answering that question, again, my identity is built around the world of family offices. I'd like to hope I'm good at it. I'd like to hope I know incredible people, and hopefully, for the most part, we're all imperfect, but have done the right thing the majority of the time. So the opportunity of me to take a little time off, to learn, to absorb, to be humbled, and the opportunity of traveling the world and meeting amazing people, which doesn't mean they need to be billionaires or super rich. I could learn things from everyone. Everyone in the world has something they do better than me that I could learn from, that I could become a better person or more successful. They could be the lowest level person, whatever, in jail. They have something they know and do better than me that I could learn from. And having that perspective, which is probably more learned than natural for us, is very important. So the work that I've done on, now I've become more global in the last couple of years. I realize that many Americans need to look at things from more of a global perspectives. Including from a family office, you want to have domestic, and you also do want to have international structures, talent, resources, assets, your trust, your foundations, your LLCs, and how you intertwine all that. So I've dedicated the last couple of years to becoming very fluid, but still learning and having a great Rolodex of opportunities of creating truly an international family office, which to me is more and more important than ever before. Look at the challenges we have in this country, in the West in general, and really around the world. The opportunity of realizing that things are changing rapidly, and so much is possible, unfortunately, and a lot of it's bad, that you want to protect family continuity, and that's incredibly difficult to do. So the opportunity of creating an international family office, the opportunity of disaster prep for the super rich, in terms
Would
of
you do
what
that
if.
as a single international family office or a multi?
I mean, I consulted and worked, sure, advised, mentored partners and leaders in multifamily offices in legal, accounting, and financial. My preference is to work directly more so with a family,
Okay.
but I have a level of fluidity and also helping to teach other professionals, which I'm going to get to in one second, in terms of what I know. Those are areas I'm very fluid in. I'm still learning, imperfect. But one of the things that probably you were hinting at, and I hinted at too, goes back a little bit to kind of that billionaire mindset. And what I said earlier, how could you 10x yourself? How could you have, and I'm not saying you need to be a billionaire to be successful, and anything that me or anyone else could teach you is going to make you a billionaire. Of course not. It's not that easy. But could you be the best version of yourself, be happy, and maybe have a level of financial freedom, which, by the way, we'll save it for a part two, but I probably define as about 30 to 50 million. Kind of a little bit free from the system, and even then it's imperfect.
Yeah, I have it at 25. Anything above 25, you can pretty much...
You're in pretty good shape, although that number, depending on what's happening with your currency, inflation, interest rates, we got global war, that number apparently keeps on creeping upwards and upwards.
Totally agree.
So-called escaping from the matrix, if you want to call it that. But I do believe there's a degree of truth to that, and that is something that people should strive. If you want to truly be free, money is important. Capital and resources, your network is also capital that I could include. And these are all things that are going to be incredibly valuable. So sometime later this year, and I'm not in a big rush, I likely will launch something that will be dedicated for those perhaps in your audience, again, as entrepreneurs, as millionaires who want more, as billionaires, that where I could be of value imparting my knowledge and my experiences and all that I've learned in my research, my travels, and what I'm continuing to do, and all the amazing people that I've known and that I'm still meeting. And here in LA for primarily the Milken Conference, I've already met some amazing billionaires, philanthropists, deep thinkers, thought leaders, global political leaders that I did not know. And all of this really is just in the last 24 hours. And now the opportunity to learn from them and to share what's not private, broadly that information discreetly and with no names, of course, to an audience to better society, I think is incredible. And so much of the super rich I know do benefit society, are active philanthropists, do want to help others. So to me, this is really exciting, but I do think there's value to taking a little bit of a step back, to, again, being humble, to learning, to having an open mind, to traveling, and then coming forth, but not too long of a wait, because you don't want to lose a little bit of momentum. And that's another thing that billionaires do well. They build momentum. And I have hundreds of different data points and things. One thing that I even looked at is, are there any strange things I notice? Like, is there anyone who's super good looking in the Forbes 400? Now, I'm going to leave you hanging on that one. I'm not going to answer it. And there probably is a reason behind a specific answer to that. You probably don't want things to come so easily, and how you have to learn how to struggle, and how that becomes important even for someone that may come from a family of a level of wealth and resources. So I think I have a lot to share, as well as I have a lot to learn from many of you as well. So stay tuned. In the meantime, I am active on social media, primarily my personal LinkedIn page. I believe it's Angelo Robles. You could find it. And I do happen to have a URL. We're updating it in terms of my website, but it's my personal name, so it's easy. Okay. It's angelorobles.com, ROBLES, and that will share insights of what I'm doing, share some of my upcoming adventures and probably my travels that I'll document as well. So stay tuned, and definitely sometime later this year, I'll be launching hopefully one or multiple companies that will be amazing in providing value back from all that I've learned that I could share with all of you.
Fantastic. So we will put the links to Angelo down below. Thank you so much for sticking around till the end. And when he does launch the next company, we will shoot you guys an email so you can subscribe and learn more about the fantastic Angelo. So
you're so kind. Thank you, KC. I appreciate you.